Oh, it's not 45. Never mind.
Yeah. But is everyone in?
There's two here.
There are two there. Okay. Let's jump into it, okay?
Recording in progress.
Okay, welcome back, everybody. It's been way too long. It was a very fascinating week. I think I had a lot of introspection. I was in the mountains of Arizona, just thinking and contemplating about the seriousness of life, and came up with interesting stuff for myself. But we are back here because we are still in the heart of Shovavim, and we need to really jump back into this because the Yetzer Hara is fighting full force. He was able to take a whole week from us, and understandably so. We are all busy, but we need to get back in. So let's dive in. So as always, remember that we have a WhatsApp chat. Please join that. Also, if you are struggling with an addiction, or you know someone is struggling with addiction, it's not enough just to learn. You need to also you need to also have a therapy, professional help. Please reach out to a therapist or reach out on behalf of someone who needs it. It's very important. If you are unsure which direction to go to, please let me know and I will connect you to the right people. Also, this year it should be in the Schos Leila Nishmas of my father, Yitzchak Kaddish ben Hanan. That is Yitzchak Kaddish ben Hanan. And may his neshama have an aliyah. And let's jump into this. All right. So we are in the second essay. We're on Gimel, the third part of the second essay. Okay, we're dealing. This third part of the second essay is all about strategies for war. How do we fight? So Meklali Amachama. So one of the rules of war is very important to know. Is Vida Esaynacha. It's based on a pasuk. You must know your enemy. You need deep thought, of real depth. Who is the real enemy in your life? And what is the strategy that's going to work best? Because at the end of the day, you are you. So we can come up with all kinds of different specific strategies, but you need to figure out the specific particulars for you, right? And we're going to try to get into particulars. We're going to actually talk about a particular issue in just a second. But I think it's important for us to know that, like, you grew up, every single one of you grew up with particular set of circumstances, with certain kinds of parents, in a certain community, with certain exposure, with certain ways you handled crises, with certain ways you dealt with yourselves. I really believe that actually one of the things I've been really thinking about over this week away was the concept of self-worth. The belief that you have something that you are truly in ownership over for yourself, or that's actually stage 2. The number 1 is that you have value. You are valuable. And I was talking with my Rebbe, Rebbe Ephraim Tursky here in Chicago. I was talking about this concept that one of the great issues we have in this generation, and why tefillah is such a problem, is because there's a national, like as a nation, I would say even this goes beyond just Yidden, but there's a problem with our generation today of not having self-worth. And it's actually very interesting. With all the advancement in technology and all the extra knowledge that we have, all the access to like the high levels of medicine and interventions and all of that, this generation of people, not just the people, human beings, are like seeing the highest levels of depression, the highest levels of anxiety, the highest levels of mental health issues. Some people want to say, well, the reason why it's so high is because we're only really noticing it now for the first time. I don't think that's true. I think there's like we're really struggling with levels of mental health not seen before. And I think it's really tied to this because when you have to live in chaos, when you have to live with uncertainty, when you have to live with really dealing with challenge, that in of itself helped you build for yourself a sense of worth. Like, this is something that I can overcome, or I need to overcome, or I'm forced to overcome. And it may have been even subconscious. We have not even thought about it. But it's extremely important that people go through some kind of thing where they feel that they can overcome something. And I think in our generation, the more barriers we take away from people, we're having the same exact problem in the frum community. The more barriers we take away, the more challenges we remove to try to smooth things out. We make everything so easy. Everything's accessible. Everything has, there's someone that really likes to say, Rabbi Gedalia Fenster. Gedalia Fenster has a podcast he does. I think it's a daily podcast he does. Very good to listen to. If you're into Chassidus, you're into Breslov, you're into also like kind of like a clear way of thinking in this day and age. Gedalia Fenster is a very, very interesting voice. But he always loves to say, today we have a pill for an ill. Every ill has a pill. Every problem has some kind of manufactured, fabricated solution to fix the thing. And when you do that, what ends up happening is you're not actually in the gym working out, and in the figurative gym. You're not actually putting in any reps. You're not putting in any effort into fixing whatever challenge that is a normal human challenge to have. We're just covering it over. And it's the same thing with things that are not ills, but like the challenges that our parents had and our grandparents had to be frum. If we can bring that analogy from the world into our frum world, like getting kosher food is not as difficult as it used to be. I think access to learning is not as difficult as it used to be. All the things, right, that were hard are not hard anymore. And what's funny is, so all those hard things about Judaism are no longer hard. So then the thing that is hard now is that thing that you can't buy, that you can't fix with a device, or you can't fix with another sefer, you can't fix with like building another shul. It doesn't work. And that's tefillah. That's like real deep relationship with Hashem. And that's like honest gemilas chasadim with fellow Yidden. I'm not talking about tzedakah. There's like more tzedakah than ever was. And it's funny, with every generation of like wealth, it's actually becoming much more difficult to live, right? Because everything is becoming more expensive. So yes, we had incredible levels of wealth, and we can have access to whatever we want. But now it's so much more difficult to live. Things are just getting more and more expensive. It's like almost as if, the Yetzer Hara is sitting there in the wings saying like, yeah, you have all the money in the world now, but it's not enough. It's not enough. And I think it's because that's never the point. The point is never the money. The point is never being able to fix your problems. The point is those things that you can't fix with a thing, which is really like, which is your relationship with Hashem, which is your tefillah, your avodah, and also your gemilas chasadim, which doesn't come down to how much money you have or how much money you're giving to tzedakah, but like how much are you willing to really go out of your way and help another yid, like just physically. And I'm sorry to say, but Torah is very easy today. I mean, there is a level of Torah which we talked about as one of the weapons, right? Which is extremely difficult, like finding your Torah. And I wouldn't say extremely difficult, but is often overlooked. Like finding your Torah, the Torah that you enjoy, the Torah that sets you on fire, and then getting yourself into flow state and sharpening your mind. I think we have like the proliferation of Torah throughout our world on such a high level that we have actually created expectations and cultures of like only certain types of Torah are allowed and certain types of Torah are not allowed. And that's also preventing us from actually accessing. So with all our ability to access Torah and the proliferation of Torah and like everything is available, and also all we have more money than we ever needed before. We have much more resources than we needed before. We have much more access to become healthy. We're actually much sicker, and with much less access, and not really connected the way we can. It's interesting how that works. And that's the thing, like, bringing it back to this, I think we all need to stop and be like, where is our situation? Like, where are we getting off the rails? And that's hard to know. That's really, really hard to know, but something that you need to figure out. And it's what he's talking about over here. So, obviously, we got to know the particulars on how we fight our particular battles, and what is affecting us, like how in our own way we think about life, or the way the constraints that we've put upon ourselves, or we have allowed others to put upon us. And no judgment, like, that's it. Like, your parents put constraints on you, and your Rebbeim put your constraints on you, and your community put your constraints on you. And if you have ADD and you're in a regular yeshiva, it's only really recently that yeshivas are getting better at, like, really understanding how to handle that. So, like, if you were not getting the services you needed and you had ADHD, you probably had a very difficult time in yeshiva, and that caused certain kinds of constraints, which then put you in a position where it was very difficult to progress in class like maybe other kids were. And that could cause a whole list of issues. And again, like, is it your Rebbe's fault for not knowing? I don't know, maybe not. But the point is, like, we're here now, and you have the issues, and you have the barriers, and you have the challenges and the traumas that are you. And we have to figure out how to address it and deal with it in our own way. So ha'eva ikri, one of the basic core types of what we would call enemies, like internal enemies, right? Shala Adam, of a person, Haim hatvias v'hargelim haroim. That is the natural tendencies, and the habits, the bad habits that we have. These are all based on the way we were living and the way we were raised. But we all have our natural tendencies, our go-to, the triggers, the things that, like, on our day-to-day, when something goes wrong, when you come home, right? When you come home and you go to the pantry because you're hungry, or you're reaching for the healthy snack, or are you reaching for the junk food, right? And then I'm talking spiritually also. When you're coming home and you're going through a challenge, are you reaching for the spiritual, healthy snack or healthy foods, the healthy behaviors, or are we reaching for the spiritual junk food, right? And it's like these natural tendencies that we have in our hearts that are not rooted in health. So and that's the other thing. Like, just like in a real world, an enemy that is all the way outside, that is outside the defenses, even if they're big enemy. But if you have good defenses, it doesn't matter how big the enemy is, it's not really going to affect you that much. It's going to affect you. There's going to be wars, there's going to be challenges, but you have your security system in place. You'll be able to fend off the bad guy, so to speak. But opi kama, it's still difficult, right? It's still difficult. But opi kama kashu mibifnim. But how much more difficult it is when your defenses are not up and they're not established, they're not developed. And you're not careful for it, and if they've breached the inner sanctum, and they're inside your life now. The same thing applies when we're dealing with the spiritual warfare. Like in Micha in Perek Zayin, like we see in Micha Perek Zayin, Oy ve'ish anshe beisai. Right? A man's enemies are the members of his own household. Obviously, we're not saying that your wife or your kids are your enemies, right? But you can see how maybe your wife and your kids are enemies if you yourself, meaning not that they are actually enemies, but if you yourself have never developed your own self-worth, and you haven't developed your own internal defenses. So being married and raising children is going to come with its challenges. But if you never learned how to take care of challenges, and you always took the pill for every single ill that came across your way, what ends up happening is they will become triggers, and they will become keilu, like enemies, because you'll have no tools to defeat it. You'll have no tools to overcome these problems. No tools to really build your house. You'll end up constantly falling every time a challenge comes up. And ha'ava v'mesiris lishmar is gufay. V'nafshay b'hami heim lamita shel davar, right? So that the ahava and the love, the Mesiris Lishmars Gufa, I guess the willingness to give yourself over to protect yourself, and the protection of that natural, that nefesh abahami. These are really these are truly the spiritual enemies that you have to deal with first. And it's actually very interesting what he's saying. It's like the reason why we run to bad things, to look at bad things, to waste time, all these kind of things. These were all learned behaviors that we've figured out how to self-medicate ourselves. That we have a challenge, we have a problem, instead of addressing the challenge head on, we run to find these methods of self-pleasure, of self-medication to cover over the problems that we have. And it's natural. It's natural for you to want to fix yourself. And if the root is traumatized, or the root of like how you deal with the issues in life is broken, or you don't have the right education or the right building blocks or the right security defenses, you're going to run and find things that are not good for you. And essentially that's what we're dealing with. Like someone who's stuck, let's say addicted to pornography, or addicted to TV, or addicted to internet, or any kind of things like that, you have to understand that at the root and the core, they're not bad people. You're not a bad person if this is you. You're not evil. You're just a human being that's trying to be good and feel good and manage themselves in this life. It's just you've learned a way to do it that is self-destructive. Right? It's the same thing. You have to understand, like a drug addict who's taking cocaine or heroin, and who's addicted to drugs and living on the street. Like, these fentanyl addicts, they have in Philadelphia, like those zombies that are just like standing there. If you've seen it in big cities, it's happening all over the place. Like we have a tendency to especially the way the news portrays it, it's like these people are so bad. It's like, no, they're not. They're not bad. They have a gaping void in their heart, and the only way they know how to fill that void is to use fentanyl or heroin or cocaine or whatever. They're just like you and me. We all have gaping voids. We all have problems. The biggest tzaddik in the world, and don't even get me started on the biographies of tzaddikim that portray them as like perfect people. Right? Like, Moshe Rabbeinu was the perfect person. But everyone else has had issues and problems, however big of a tzaddik you are. But they've obviously figured out healthy ways to deal with it. And the biographies don't show us, and I always say that the biographies are actually half the book. Because it is true. Like, the things in the biographies are 100% true, and they are great people, and they're the greatest people alive, or the greatest people that have lived, and they are great role models. But for us struggling, in the muck and the mire, we need tools on how to deal with it. So, it would be really nice to know, how Ramosha Feinstein dealt with anger, or how he dealt with laziness. And he obviously dealt with it, right? Ramosha Feinstein obviously figured out a way to deal with it, because he overcame it in a healthy way and became extremely productive, right? Or any other tzaddik, and we see a little bit with Rabbi Nachman who talks about it, feeling disconnected from Hashem. Rabbi Nachman Breslov is he seems to be one of the few people that really talk about being broken as a person and feeling disconnected. But again, even with Rabbi Nachman, sometimes, and maybe it is the Gedolim are really kind of a different kind of person, and as we learn in Tanya talks about the tzaddik is a different kind of neshama and deals with different types of issues than what Bain and him deal with. But it would be very helpful to know, how did the great people of our history, how do they deal with these basic struggles, these basic things? Because again, the fentanyl addict is no different than me and you. We you don't know what your life would have ended up given the right circumstances. Maybe you would have been one of these fentanyl zombies as well. And if you're really, really struggling with addiction, with pornography, there's many legitimate reasons why you find yourself in this way, and you were just never given the tools. You were never given the tools to deal with it. And that's all talking about extreme addiction. Even talking about a regular person in this world, A regular person in this world has challenges they need to overcome, and they don't always have the right tools to overcome it and to fix it. But it doesn't mean you're evil because you went to go look at something bad or you did something bad. It means that you, in the moment, were trying to feed this regular tendency that you have, and you fed it the wrong thing. That's it. That's what it means. And then now you're suffering stomachache. Like if you eat certain foods, right, that are not healthy for you, over time you're just gonna get sick. It's just natural. It's just a natural consequence of what happens. You're gonna get sick. And if you don't know what the healthy foods there are to eat, if you don't know how to have a healthy diet, you'll continuously get sick, and you'll always wonder why. Like, why am I keep getting sick? So Oiva Gadol would be Oiser, right? And real, like a greater love would be Sheshomer is Gufay Mikol Pega, who Oiva Gadol Nishmasai. So obviously you want to take care of your physical body, right? But even a higher level would be someone who protects his body from any kind of ill on a spiritual level. Right, and that is the nature and like the push of your soul. That this enemy has gotten through. Right, we're not talking about the enemy that is outside and you have good defenses. We're talking about the enemy that's broken through, that's inside. It's like so you feel so. It's like your regular natural reaction to things. And then that's inside, and how you do it, and meaning that it is known. Obviously, like this is like a lashon hara. He doesn't want to talk about specific, like pornography. But I think also what this means is that he's talking specifically about you. Like you have a particular kind of enemy that has breached all the walls, that is deep inside your heart, and you know that person. And I don't know that person. I know I'm working, and again, everyone knows the enemy that's deep in their heart. But sometimes we don't like to face it head on. And when you spend a long period of time in life not facing on that demon inside, it's very easy to forget he's there, or you want to cover it up. It's part of the way you deal with self-medicate, is to forget or to ignore him. But he's there in a clear moment. Like you're able to think, and you're sitting on your bed in the morning and it's quiet and you're getting dressed. You have like 5 minutes there where you can really do his baidus. Or rather, yes, you should do his baidus too. But his baininus, where like self-introspection, like really look that demon in the eye. Right? And Hema Oeva Yosef Panimi, how you do a Linatza Kol Shah, right? That you're constantly fighting every single moment. Mishal Chusha, for this weakening that he causes, riffing your dime and the damage that he causes, Lahat Kifai. Right, and to fight him, and to win against him, right? There's demons inside constantly, and some of us have good strategies, some of us don't. Some of us have really good strategies for day to day, but we don't have good strategies when we have like a major crisis. Everyone's a little bit different. Everyone's a little bit has their own way they deal with it or not deal with it. Ba'adam tzarek lisamek l'lumoid es tviyaisav utchunaisav b'hakara. Every single person needs to, in depth, learn up his nature and the emotions of his heart. Uva hakara, with like clear recognition. Uva seis hakara, and also with things that are like beneath his recognition, meaning like his subconscious awareness. Like I said, like if you live a whole life, you're 40 years old. And you've lived your whole life with bad behaviors, or rather bad coping mechanisms. So what ends up happening is you can't even see they're there. You can't even see that these problems are there. They're like in the subconscious. But the truth be told, if you're sitting quietly, and again, you don't even need. It's good to have a good rebbe. But if you don't have a good rebbe or a good friend that can like point this out to you, you can do this on your own. You just have to do his baidus and his baininus. You have to do both of those things and really, really delve deep. Maybe, like how we spoke about journaling, that's a very, very helpful to kind of track, how you respond to external stimuli. Like, a good thing really, like a good journaling prompt would be right every single morning, or maybe, I don't know, maybe every evening before you go to bed, right? You sit down with a notebook and journal and just say like, went well today. It's always good to recognize your wins. What went badly today, and what was my thought processes for both of these? Like, did I think myself, or did I recognize the good in me when I had those wins, and when I had those bad, when I had those failures? I don't want to say failures because like you're not a failure, but when you had situations where things didn't go the way it should have gone, like, what were you thinking about it? Like, what were your thoughts around that? Again, that could be like a very easy, like 2-minute prompt. I mean, I imagine some days that will take you hours depending on what's happening. But, make it very simple. Start to pick one thing that went well, one thing that went badly. And like, what were your thought process behind it? Both of those things. And you'll start to learn like how you think. And he's saying that you need to do this. It's a sugya. This is a sugya. How many people out there are learning Daf Yomi because they're too afraid to actually go into their own head and think about and think about how they think. How do they make decisions about things? It's so easy to just pop a shear in every time you're in the car. There's a real problem in our modern world where we're like constantly need to be stimulated by something. Even healthy things. It's like too much. We get into a car, there has to be music on. I'm so sick of that. Like, I'm so sick of like the garbage music that we're pumping out because we have to put on in the radio. And it's like, I miss the days where you just like sat and like listened to an album. You know what I mean? Like in the Jewish music. I'm not saying that there's like all music is garbage today, but there's just so much garbage today. So much garbage today. I think there's always been the same amount of like good music throughout history, different styles, different things. But in our modern world, it's so easy to make music now, right? So you still have like, the same amount of good music out there that's being made, but there's so much more garbage flooding and drowning it all out. And then like the music that you listen to, constantly need to have like a shear on or a podcast. Everything has to be stimulation. You're being stimulated by something else. I was standing on the side of a mountain in Arizona, davening and Nate's, and with nothing. It was just me, my tefillin, my talis. It was like random hikers walking by, like thought I was completely crazy, and like I just didn't care. I was just like looking at the sunrise, and like realizing like there's really like you don't need anything, right? That's not already a part of the world, And don't get me started. I'm gonna go on a whole rant about vacations, but like we go on these like lavish vacations and we don't even know how to go on vacation anymore. We don't know how to appreciate the physical world that Hashem gave us anymore. So we pay so much money for fabricated, manufactured experiences. We pay all this money to like go to a hotel so we can be entertained. I'm not saying there isn't a place or a time and a place for going to a hotel and like having them, make all the delicious food and make their trips and like entertain your kids so you can just be quiet and relaxed by the side of a pool. But if like that's your only entire version of vacation, you are missing out on what Hashem gave. Hashem, like when you go to places like my family went to Arizona and we just nonstop just dove in headfirst into nature. It was all free. I mean, there was one where you had to like pay a parking fee when we went to the Grand Canyon. But when you're standing in the Grand Canyon, like this is something that Hashem gave to you. It is mind-boggling how big and huge and how vast the Grand Canyon is, how beautiful it is, and it's a gift that Hashem gave to you. And the Grand Canyon, just standing there, gives you a tool to kind of fit yourself into the grand scheme of things. But if you spend your entire life waiting for something else to stimulate you, like we're not going to do a nature hike and experience the beauty that Hashem made. We're going to go to, some event or some manufactured thing where like people are going to, where they're going to make a concert and we're going to go to that thing. Like, these Chalamoid trips where it's constantly like an amusement park, all these man-made attractions to distract ourselves, to keep our mind off like real stress in our life. No wonder we have such health issues and such problems and mental health and like, living meaningfully. As we forgot that we're constantly waiting for someone else to entertain us. And I think we need to grab our own life by the horns and take control again, because it's so easy for us to fly off course, waiting for somebody else to handle it as opposed to like really connecting ourselves. I'm sorry, I'm speaking a little cryptically. I apologize, because there's a lot that I'm still processing from the trip that I went on with my family, of really like tapping into nature properly. And I may at some point come out with it. I write also. I have a newsletter that I write called Gibor. So I'm trying to figure out a way to like write about this experience. Maybe do a podcast separately about these type of things in like daily from living, like addressing these issues. And they're like really right at the forefront of my head. So if I'm really off the reservation, just like kind of rambling, I apologize. But the Nesivos Shalom here is telling us that we have an obligation to figure out what's going on in our own heads, what are our natural tendencies in our own heads, and how we make decisions. And it's okay when we fail. Like, okay, we failed, but like make it a lesson. It's school. The whole world, every experience is constant. We're in constant school, learning the good things. Like, why was it good? How did it work? Like, what was my brain thinking? Why did I decide to do this thing and it worked out? And then when things don't work out, like, why did I do this thing and it didn't work out? Like, what was in my head? Like, why was I attracted to that negative thing? Why am I looking where I shouldn't? He's saying right over here, you need to understand this about yourself. Actually, I have a book over here in my little library on it's called Leadership Strategy and Tactics by Jocko Willink. I started looking into it of like he's a Navy SEAL, and he put like a book together like using Navy SEAL leadership tactics to like how to apply that to life and like general problems in life and in business. He's a very prolific author, and I'm actually thinking of using that book and connecting it to this, like really learning how to understand your nefesh using military tactics. I haven't started it yet, but that's what he's saying here. You got to learn strategies for war. You got to learn how war works. The foundation, the big foundation of success or victory for the enemy, who begoil mechetz hahistaris. That is so one strategy, we're going to start focusing now on like one particular strategy, is the crushing blow, mechetz hahistarus. It's the crushing blow of the charge. Remember, we talked about this a little bit, where the war used to be fought where you'd have like two lines of enemies that would line up and face each other, and they would just charge at each other and just smash into each other. And it's actually a very ancient way of fighting. It's not so effective now with guns and bullets, but it is still, and if you look into your own life, it is still a technique that the Yetzer Hara uses, where he just comes at you with a smashing blow to completely crush you. Right? So, Shetiyat kafas bezek al kol hachazisus. Right? What does that mean? So it's like a lightning attack on all fronts. So there is a concept. So that was the ancient way of doing it. But there is a concept of the Blitzkrieg. You're familiar with the Blitzkrieg? This is what the Nazis came up with. So we're going to learn some Nazi military tactics here for a second. Okay? I actually should have pulled it up before. So it sounds like what he's describing here, and this Shalom is called the Blitzkrieg. And this is how the Nazis were so effective. So very quickly, the Blitzkrieg was a World War II German offensive strategy using rapid, coordinated, and concentrated force. So they had tanks, motorized infantry, and air support to shatter enemy defenses through speed and psychological shock. Right? So the idea was that instead of sending out like tanks and then fighting on the ground, and then sending in soldiers and then fighting soldiers to soldiers, or then sending in air support and bombing people. They figured out a way by being very, very organized, by being like that crazy, German organization, to do it all at once. And the idea was not just the idea was to shorten the length of time, because what they had in World War I was trench warfare, where would slowly gain ground, right? And they would dig these trenches on both sides. They'd dig these trenches and then fight, and then they would gain a few feet and then dig another trench and then gain a few feet and dig another trench. The Blitzkrieg, what I'm doing is we would take massive portions of land right away without any trenches, just by bombing like crazy, and then having soldiers come in at the same time, and then having tanks come in at the same time. I may not be explaining it exactly correct, but he's calling it like a lightning attack. He's called a lightning attack. What was the exact lashon again? Right, a lightning attack on all fronts. It's literally what Blitzkrieg means. Right, what does this mean? Right, that the enemy, right, will have no time to recover at all, and he'll lose all bearings, because and it was very, very effective. It's why Germany was able to take so much land. Why the Nazis were able to take so much land throughout Europe and expand their borders very, very quickly. There was also a whole psychological piece. I'm actually reading a very fascinating book on books in World War II, and the Nazi propaganda to burn all books. Obviously, they burned the Svarim, but they were burning all books, secular books that said anything against the Nazi, or they felt was ideas or themes that would not support the Nazi regime. They would burn it. And then Americans, and to fight it, they actually gave American soldiers books like novels and nonfiction and poetry and all kinds of things to pep up the spirits of the soldiers. So it's interesting. You can find them still today. They're not really in print anymore, obviously, but these special armed forces publications of books that they would keep. They were designed in such a way they were able to sit neatly in a pocket, and the book actually talks about this. It's very interesting that these soldiers, the American soldiers, passed these books around to each other, and they would trade it, and this actually kept the soldiers fighting. It kept the soldiers with their spirits up, and they would also give it out to the people in Europe, the regular people that were struggling. They would give those books out. And it really circulated throughout the European continent, all these books. Very, very interesting. I forgot the name of it just yet. I think it's called the Books That Won the War. And I'm listening to it on tape. So if I remember, I'll try to find it for you and bring it up. But it's very, very interesting. So the Blitzkrieg was not just physical, but it was also used or designed to psychological, to break you down psychologically. Okay, so this is the main strategy for the Yetzer Hara to use. Hamistar, this is what the Yetzer Hara uses. Hamistar alav v'roitze lehatrida mibeis elamais. He's, again, remember, the Yetzer Hara doesn't care only about taking away your olam haba. We all know people who are completely subsumed in taiva don't only lose olam haba, they also lose this world. This world becomes constantly like an endless black hole of pain that you keep trying to fill physically, and it never ends up filling. So he uses this tactic to completely remove you from both worlds. Until a person doesn't even have the ability to fight against it. And with this weapon, with this gun, literally, I think neshek, it means a gun. This, and again, we keep talking about it, the same weapons the Yetzer Hara uses to hurt us, are within them are the techniques that we can use against the Yetzer Hara. And this is how the Hasidim and the big Anshe Maisa, I love that term. Anshe Maisa are people, the people of action, men of action. right? We keep talking about like being a tzaddik, being a talmid chacham, being a ben Torah. These are all good. But you got to be a man of action. You got to be a gibor, right? And that's why I named my newsletter actually Gibor, because Gibor means anybody. You may not even feel that you're a ben Torah. Ben Torah is kind of like, it's very important. And I'm not saying that a Gibor can't be a ben Torah, but a ben Torah is like a state of being. It's like a place you reach. Like you got to a point where like you're regularly learning Torah and you kind of got your life together, so now you're ben Torah, right? Or you're an askan, you're someone that helps the community. Or you're a chassid, like you are someone that's, fully integrated already into the teachings of Chassidus. Or you're a rebbe, or you're a tzaddik, or you're a gadol. Like these are all words that we have that we describe people with, are people who have already reached some level of success. But your average person hasn't. And we don't really have good terms for them. Like we call people ben Torah, and we try to call people who are even learning on a basic level or starting the journey of Torah, that we call them ben Torah. But the problem, ben Torah still is very easy for a person to not feel fully engaged in that feeling of being a ben Torah if they're dealing with issues of self-worth. But when you call yourself a gibor doesn't mean any of those things. A gibor is a warrior. Like if you're in the fight, we're talking about like being in the fight. You may not have all the tools with you straightened out. You may not be even winning the fight. And like we said, right, you're stabbed and pierced from all areas and just bleeding out, right? But you're still a gibor. You're still an anshe maisa. You're a man of action. Yeah, your actions may not be so developed like a true ben Torah, or like someone who's really learning or really living a life connected to Hashem. But that's fine. That's okay. Like you need to be someone that learns how to stay in the fight. And even when we fail, and even when we keep falling and keep getting hurt, but we're still there. We're still being the gibor. And really the gibor is named after that Mishnah in Pirkei Avos. What is a gibor? Ezehu gibor. Right? What does it mean to be a strong person? Obviously not physical. I mean, you should work out and have physical strength because that'll help you do mitzvahs. But, right, what is a true gibor? Hakovesh es yitzro. Someone who conquers his nature. And it's very telling, that line. Someone who conquers his nature. It's not someone who's conquering, what Yenim is fighting, right? Reuven has a problem that he's dealing with, right? But Shimon is basically dealing with like your average standard issue that the community's dealing with. So Reuven's constantly being told, well, this is how you got to fight the problem that Shimon has, right? And that everyone else in the community has. But Reuven's like, but I got my own problem to fight, right? Like, I have issues that I need to deal with, right? And if I'm fighting Shimon's problems, I'm never going to actually address my own problems. And a true gibor is kovish his own yetzer. He's not kovish Shimon's yetzer. He's kovish his own yetzer. The things that drive him, the innermost feelings that he has about, the issues that he's dealing with. That's what he's fighting constantly on a day-to-day basis. And that's what we need to be doing. This is all of us. We need to be doing this. Shekol Shabbos v'chag, every Shabbos and every Yontif, v'chol eis, and every moment, matzai, that he finds himself in. Hayim shamish la'atkafa ayuma ala oiva primi. Actually, it's interesting. I don't know why he uses like every Shabbos, because we're talking about every moment of life. So I don't know why he's using Shekol Shabbos, every Shabbos, maybe like every week and every Yontif, because these are like milestones in our week and in our year, right? Where we can like look back and like see how things are going. I actually have a whole side thing about like using the Yom Tovim and like particular Shabbos with the Parshias, right? Why it all falls out in the particular order that it does, because it's all kind of a path and a program to help us wherever we may be. Every single yid, wherever they may find themselves, could still fall into the flow of the yearly cycle and learn based on the Yom Tovim they're dealing with how to fix whatever they're dealing with on a personal level. So maybe that's what he means, that like every Shabbos is like, a milestone in the week, like looking back at your week. And when you looking back in your week and you're seeing how you behave, and every Yontif, when you look on that tekufa of the year to see how things are happening in your life. And then he adds, V'chol eis amatzui, and every moment that you're in, hayim hishamish lahatkafa ayuma ala ayev, you got to figure out how to overpower and take over the enemy hapnimi that's inside you. Lahachar is milchama al kol sharshei hara b'shabikirbai, and to wage war, and to wage war. Lahachar, and to announce war, to call for war, on every one of these like internal issues that we have that are inside of us. Ulachniam, and to also subdue ourselves. LaHashem Yisbarach, in front of the holiness of Hashem Yisbarach, right? To be machnia, to subdue the negative parts of us that try to take over and be in control. The Mesiras Nefesh, and we have to use Mesiras Nefesh like we talked about, like when we're dealing with great crisis in life. Shemayim Rabam lo yuchlu lichabes ahava, and that even the great waters is not able to cover up and to wash away this fire that we should have for our Kadosh Baruch Hu. We all know that we have it. We all have the fire. It's just about letting it poke through the grime, right? And if a person just starts with one little prat, one little specific point, sheyitzer miskaber, sorry, if a different angle he's taking, that if a person doesn't work on himself at all, and his yetzer takes over, right? All the other inyanim, like once you let the enemy in, right? All the other things, even things that are working well for you in life, if you're not careful, could get affected by letting that enemy in. And right? You're not going to find a likelihood for victory when you're not vigilant, when you're not careful. So we're going to stop here for now. But I hope this gave you a little bit of a foundation of looking at the strategies that you need, war strategies. And again, we talked about it in a general level, but I hope I'm giving over the idea that you need to find out what works for you specifically. What is the thing that you struggle with, and why you're struggling with it, and why does it pertain to you particularly because of the life that you lead? And I wish you much atzlacha. We're going to continue tomorrow at a regular schedule. Anybody have any questions? All right. I'm looking forward to learning again with you guys tomorrow to continue this deep dive. Jake, you there?